Welcome to A Sex Worker's Guide to the Galaxy, a show where the answer to life, the universe, and everything is sex workers. I'm your host, Parker Westwood, and it is my pleasure to bring to you today someone that I had the privilege of meeting when they came to visit Detroit around the time of my birthday. They actually came to a birthday party of mine. Y'all don't need to know all of this, but it was a lovely time. Lots of pole dancing and merriment was had, and we immediately connected. I'm talking about the one and the only Amber Délice, and I immediately knew I needed to have them on what was then just a pipe dream of a podcast. And here we are. The podcast is real, and we did have her on their show. So get ready, buckle your seatbelts. This is a good one. We talk about how she has curated dates for clients, how she's drawn the kind of clients that she wants to her and her business. And we also talk about dating woes and tribulations, among many other things. It's a pretty rich interview, so I hope you enjoy it as much as I did, and I see Amber on the show in the future as well, so be prepared for that. In any case, enjoy the interview. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yay. Okay, so for everyone, we're here with Amber Délice. I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself the way you prefer to be introduced. So include pronoun and all of that jazz.
Oh, wow. I've not introduced myself yet on a podcast. I am Amber Délice. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a woman on the internet that you can spend time with.
I like that. Keep it simple. How would you classify the work that you do or describe the work that you do?
Yeah, so I definitely use the term sex worker, but I prefer companion. I'm fine with escort, but yeah, I do full service sex work, and I've noticed that in my work, I lean toward having longer bookings, that I can, where I can help clients access deeper levels of intimacy within themselves. So, yeah.
Wonderful. And we're going to talk more about that in a bit, because I know that's a topic we want to dive into. But just to get a little background, how did you get started in the industry?
Yeah. So I birthed Amber at the end of 2017, but I've been in the sex work industry since 2008, I think. I never remember if it's 2008 or 2009, but I started as a dancer. And I really, really loved being a dancer. I know everyone has different experiences, but for me, in my city of Boulder, which is a very small city, and it was just really empowering. And I really loved being there with my girlfriends and experiencing my body in new ways and sensuality in new ways and dance and performance. And so I took that and I created some private events around reclaiming the stereotypes of the strip club for the divine feminine. So I hosted those for about a couple of years. And then I tried doing arrangements for a while, as we sometimes do. And for me, it did not work very well. I never found what I was looking for. And then I found this industry at the end of 2017, and I was like, oh, this is it. This is what I want. I want the containership and the exactness and the ability to create experiences for people. So
I love that. Also, the events that you had planned, I want those right meow. I want those now in the world. I mean, obviously COVID's here, but after COVID, I want those in our lives.
Yeah, it was so much fun to do, and such a wild journey for some time. They were kind of like private underground events in Boulder that I hosted, and they took quite a lot out of me, but they were, yeah, I loved them. They're such a beautiful memory.
Oh, it sounds like it. I have
Yeah.
so many more questions about those things, but maybe we could.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that is way too cool. It kind of like, I don't know if you've heard of the comic Safe Sex.
No, I don't think so. The
I'll
comic?
It's a comic. I'm gonna put that in the
Mm,
show notes, but I'm also going to
hmm.
I wish I remembered names. I'm like cursing myself for not having like names at the ready for this, but it's a comic called Safe Sex, and it's like this underground um the world is saved by sex workers, but there's like this
Mm.
underground sex worker situation of like parties
Oh, I
and
need that. Oh,
yeah,
that sounds great.
it's really great. Yeah, so it
Mm.
reminds me of that. I will send you a link for that, but I'll also put it in the show notes for anyone listening. One of the questions I had written down is like what is your journey looked like to get to the work that you do now.
Mm,
So I know you
hmm.
kind of took us through the like step by step, play by play, logistical part, but like I don't know, how would you describe your journey? Are there any sort of like growth moments that you would want to talk about?
Mm. Ugh. Yeah. Um, so I I started Amber actually as a just the website. I because so and this is kind of embarrassing, but I'll share it anyway. Um, so
Those are the
you maybe
best.
you're familiar with yeah with the show The Girlfriend Experience on Stars.
Hmm.
Yeah, okay. So, which of course, like, we're just like, like that, she's so cold, like, how could she get, But
Hmm.
at the time, I was, I was watching it, and I remember, and this is before Amber, I was watching, I think it's like the second episode, and I don't remember the character's name, so sorry, to Stars, but the there's a scene where the main character, the woman who's like thinking about getting into escorting, is looking at her best friend's website online, her best friend's like escort website. And I just remember when she was looking at it, I kept like pausing it, and I was like, oh, like there's like an etiquette page, and there's like, a gallery, and there was like, it's very like well designed. And I was like, do these websites like exist? Like how like, I like had no idea. And because my work had been very entrepreneurial, like I've been an entrepreneur in many different ways since like yeah, since 2008.
Hmm.
Um, and I'd done a lot of work around like in the online space and creating my own websites for different like iterations of really of myself,
Hmm.
but of like my businesses and building like different brands around different things. In my civilian world. And so, yeah, I guess my first thought was like, if I had a website, how would I create it? Like if I were an escort, and this wasn't so
Yeah.
far off for me because obviously I'd mentioned I was a dancer and I'd done arrangements. So it wasn't just like, let's like be an escort. But I was like, what would I ask for? Or what would I like really want to call in? Or like what kind of clients would I want to have? Like my mind just kind of started doing that from like an entrepreneurial perspective. And so that's how I started creating my website without so much the intention of like being Amber. But I was like, this is like what creating websites at the time was just like a palette for creation and playfulness and
Hmm.
uh, I don't know. I don't really like using the word manifesting, but like for, calling in or setting intention. So that's kind of what I did. And my website now doesn't look anything like that. And now I think about that website and I'm like, oh, that was not super great. But I tried my best at the time. And
Hmm.
um, I know that, so I'm a writer as well. And so I just wanted to like write out like exactly what I was wishing for. And so then once I had it, I was like, well, how do clients find this website? So like that was kind of
Yes.
like the pathway. It was like Amber's a very like digital human, like where she exists. And yeah, and then found ads and all of that, and found some of our peers' websites, who is now just funny to think about. It's like now we've like gone to brunch together and all of that, and they started as like people where I was like, I really, really admire so much about your site and the design and photos and everything. So yeah, so that's like how Amber started. And then Yeah, I mean, I think this is maybe a common story, but I think for the first year and a half of my work, it was really just a lot of work around boundaries, just
Mm-hmm.
personal boundaries, and encountering all the kind of common stereotypes of boundary pushing in the industry, time, rate, just everything,
Mm-hmm.
and just figuring out my worth and my value and like what I uniquely had to bring to the industry. I'm pretty sure when I started, I did all the like common things that you see of just like high-end escort. I'm making quote signs right now in the air, like high-end escort, like elite only, or like all those like phrases that now I see them and I'm like, oh, that's so cute. like
Yeah.
and it's sweet because it's like I see what you want, and like this is the kind of cookie cutter like way that some of us start, and then we kind of like find like what is our unique expression through this, and so
Mm-hmm.
that, yeah, that was part of my journey.
Yeah. Oh, that's also relatable.
Yeah, I'm curious more about you too. Like, did you have a similar journey when you started Parker? And
I
maybe you
mean,
said this is another podcast, so I don't want to
no,
make you
that's
repeat things, but yeah,
totally
I'm really
okay.
curious.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience, and I feel like I'm still, I mean, coming into like who I am as Parker, it feels like a journey in as much as it's like the same journey through life where I'm like coming into myself repeatedly. But yeah, Parker, I was so, if I think about my old website, it was so boring. Like the copy was just fine. Like I was actually pretty proud of the
Yeah,
copy. But I was
yeah, I
just
feel
so
you.
afraid to be any semblance of myself.
Mm,
Like take
mm,
to allow my in real life, like my civilian self into my Parker identity, like really scared me for some reason. Um,
mm.
and then the more I allowed that to happen and like really find a comfortable place in Parker and like being Parker, um, I was just like, oh, this is so much easier. Like there's so much less energy when you can just kind of show up as yourself.
Oh, I feel like you put that so eloquently. And as you were saying that, I was picturing like a flower that's like really tight, like and trying to bloom, and just kind of like this like resistance of not wanting to share. I mean, and for so many reasons, right? We want to
Hmm.
protect and yeah, keep our civilian selves separate. And it's such a journey of figuring out like what to like, where to be porous, and where the porousness like leads to possibility, and where we really don't want to share too. And like that's, yeah, it's such a tension. Yeah, so I'm just really glad that you said that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm also like going on a dating journey and I feel the same sort of thing coming up right now. So
Oh my God.
that's very much in my face right now.
Oh yes, me too. Oh yes.
I'm glad I'm not alone in that.
Oh my God.
It's so good. I love, so as you were talking, I was just like falling in love with how intentional you are. And this is a thing I've noticed about you, like as we've spoken, the few times we've gotten to speak and spending time with you,
Hmm.
is that you're very thoughtful and intentional about most of like all the things that you do. Um,
Hmm.
and so I wanted to give you an opportunity because we've talked a little bit about wanting to bring this up in the podcast of like curating an experience on your dates with clients. Um, so if you wouldn't mind like talking a little bit about like what goes into curating an experience for a client and like your process with that or what you think about beforehand.
Hmm. Yeah. So I would say it, of course, it depends on the client and the length of time, but I think I'll answer from the perspective of like someone I've seen before, and that it's maybe like a longer date, like a 24-hour, 48-hour date.
I love
Um,
hypotheticals. Let's do it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because I definitely, yeah, and I was thinking about this earlier, like I don't put the same amount of like intention, which isn't to say I'm just like floating around, anchorless in shorter dates, but there's just more intention, and
Mm-hmm.
there's more time to plan when I am also being like valued and given like a space to like expand into. So
Mm-hmm.
when there's more time. Um, so so this is an interesting question, especially right now, during COVID, because a
Right.
lot of my skills at, so I used to be a journalist, and I have a really strong sense of landing in any city that I'm in. Um, I have a strong sense of figuring out like where the culture is, and getting help from the right people, and not doing like so much like touristy things, but things that have some essence and heart of the city in them. So that it has been a little bit disrupted, because of COVID, because of things are closed or they're closing or they're and you can't even depend on a website saying something is open because someone might have just caught COVID and so they're closed for the 2 weeks that you're there.
Mm-hmm.
So my answer's gonna be a little bit different. So I have had to be more creative around things to do inside, things to do indoors. So I mean, I can plan anything as simple as like, one of my clients, we're both writers. And so, and he has sent me in the past, a book of poetry, or a couple of books of poetry. So first of all, I track that. And, we all have our ways of tracking things, whether it's like in notebooks or in spreadsheets, about clients. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, like I might track like interests and, especially gifts too that they'll send, and like I will kind of, mine is such a like data word, but I'll like mine that for ideas, for
Mm-hmm.
both of us to go deeper or connect. So I saw this client, like, I mean, I know him, and I also know that he's a writer, and so I set up a poetry night, for like a poetry slam, but for the two of us, like inside of our hotel.
Cute.
And this is pretty simple, nothing elaborate, but I brought, so another, this is just going to get weird real fast, but I brought, so he knows I love, God, what was it? Oh, he knows I love, Sour Patch Kids. Like, so this is
Yes.
going to get confusing, but like, and I, please no, if you're listening to this, please don't send me Sour Patch Kids, because they're just like, but anyway, so he's just really sweet, and he'll bring me like a little packet of Sour Patch Kids. So I'll kind of like binge on them after a dinner sometimes. And so I had them, and
Yes.
I was like, this poetry night is sponsored by Sour Patch Kids, and like,
Oh my
and I also
God.
had, it was really ridiculous, but it was also like after a dinner, we both had a couple of drinks of wine, we're feeling a little whimsical.
It's so
And then
perfect.
I had my little Bose speaker. I know a lot of us bring like a little speaker on tours or for flying to use, for music. And so I had my speaker, and I'd set up like a bunch of poetry books, two that he had sent me, which I brought with me, and then two of from my favorite poets. And so I had them on the table. And then I knew that he, was also a writer. And so, I'm kind of planning that maybe he would read something. And then I also had some of my own personal poetry, and I chose a poem that I felt comfortable sharing with him. And so
Mm-hmm.
I just sort of played the role of like presenter. Like I told him to get out of the room so that I could like set it up. And I had him come in, and I was like, welcome to the to the like COVID-19 poetry reading, like
Oh, I
the COVID friendly
love
poetry reading,
that.
whatever. I feel like I'm not telling the story super well, but yeah. And so I also, since I had the speaker, I was able to play, some of my favorite poets have read, their poetry online, of course, like on their website. So I would like have us read a poem to each other, like stand up on the stage, which was like the where the TV was in the hotel suite or
Right.
something, and like get up, and then I'd play like like a clapping track on like the phone or
Oh
something.
my
And so
God,
it was
yes.
it was it was really like whimsical and silly, but I have a bend toward, or a leaning toward, being theatrical.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like diving into that for me with a client, like at first can feel, I can feel nervous, and like, I'm like have anxiety about it. But if I just like pour myself into the role, I find that like they'll go along with it with me. And perhaps maybe find me more endearing if they book me again. I find out the next time if they found it too weird or if they found it endearing.
Yes.
Yeah. And then it just, when I think about it from the lens of like our work, it just, it breaks things up. When you, especially if it's a long booking and you're, kind of sort of stuck in the hotel for most of it. And I know that, and I mean, I'll speak from my experience, but like that might feel anxiety inducing of like, oh my goodness, it's like 3 days, like, what am I going to do at this time during COVID? Like, we can't go out like very much. And I think that bringing in aspects of theater and immersive theater into our work in a way that is either something simple, honoring what the client, like an interest the client has, or something like even a little bit deeper that kind of traverses more like deeper emotional spaces, depending on what the client's open to and what you're open to, is just a really fun, creative way to pass the time and connect with each other. So
Yes. I love that so much. That's so good. Yeah, I would love that. That sounds like maybe we should just do that one day. Like
yeah.
a poetry slam. That's so great. I like when you were saying like bringing in elements of theater and like making that makes you feel like nervous at times because it's just kind of out of the box. I relate to that in a really big way of like, so because I don't want to do the same date over and over again.
Yeah, and our clients don't really either.
No, who wants that? So
Yeah.
it's nerve-wracking to kind of get vulnerable in that way where you're like, these are things I know you're interested in and I'm interested in too. Let's get weird about it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
totally.
I love that example. That sounded like a lot of fun.
Thanks. I was describing it. I was like, I don't know that I'm doing a good job of this, but I'm glad you,
Oh no, I
yeah,
was there
are
with you.
okay with
I
my
think you
weirdness.
did great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, great, great. Yeah. Yeah. And it's fun and whimsical. And then also like there were parts of it that were very personal, like when I was sharing my poetry and when he was sharing some of his writing, and I feel like sometimes when we have that, container, that we're able to share more intimate parts of ourselves, and it feels safe and feels okay, and obviously checking in if it doesn't, but yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, sharing art is one of my
Yes.
favorites. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Cool. I'm going to move on to another question because I have so many for you. How do you find the clients that you want, or how do you like draw the clients that you want to get to you? Because we all know that like in the beginning that we get a lot that we don't want. Unfortunately, there are just
Mm-hmm.
assholes in this world.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, how have you gone about to kind of cultivate a clientele or hone in on your clientele?
Mm. Yeah. When I think about the answer to that question, I think and I go back to, kind of 2018 for me and early 2019, it was a lot of no's, and to, those clients you mentioned, a lot of no's. I just started to get really rooted into what I was desiring. And I know like it isn't for everyone. I mean, I met a lot of fellow providers who were like, Jesus Christ, like I would not want to spend that much time, like that's not for me. But for me, like how I ideally would want to run my business is I'd want to work just a couple times a month and do like 24-hour, 48-hour dates,
Mm-hmm.
where I can dive really deep and then have a lot of expanse of like my solo Amber time.
Mm-hmm.
um, and that just works for me. And I think I figured that out when I started to get like 6 to 8 hour dates. And I was like, ooh, this allows me to have a part of me come alive that isn't as much possible for like, I think at the time I was doing an hour or 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always some curation when it comes to any type of date of like how long we're going to spend, with this glass of wine and whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
it didn't give me the same sense of aliveness or juice as like a 6 hour date where I was like, oh, I get to plan, where we're going in the city, and then there's this botanical garden nearby, and then there's this. And I've been lucky enough where clients have really let me lead in that way. like have just sort of trusted me, like whether I was living there or not, like in the city that I was in. And so I think when I started to see that, and then still kind of got those other types of clients we mentioned, or clients, quote unquote, I was like, oh, this is the direction I want to go. Like, absolutely. And so I took, for me, what worked is like, I took my phone number off everything. I still somehow get texts. I don't know how, but like took my phone number off everything because I just noticed that when people contacted me through the phone, um, as actually when I think right now about who my regulars are and who I adore the most, none of them contacted me through my phone. It was always like a long, answer on my, like, why do you want to meet me, on my screening form, just like very
Mhm.
professional and very open and polite. And so I was like, I'm gonna take a risk and like take my phone number off. So super simple thing. And then I, on my Twitter, I
Mhm.
pretty much exclusively like when I do the whole client post thing of like this was my date, I will almost exclusively post about, or I started to just post about like the longer dates and the curation and the like more experiential things,
Mhm.
so that then I could draw more of that in, right? So then like the idea being like then a person might see that and like someone who would want that kind of date with a provider
Mhm.
might contact me and see that like I'm open to that. Um, and then, yeah, I would also say it's definitely personal work for me.
Mhm.
And like just my own personal journey of learning how to have boundaries and also keep my heart open. And I feel like that if for me when I'm learning something, sometimes I do sort of like a pendulum swing. Like I'll go like all the way over to one side, and if we're talking about boundaries, that might be, I'll be very like defensive or protective, right? And then it's like I kind of swing back, and I'm like, oh, actually, but I do want to be in my heart, and I want to be open. So how can I like have this in a way that's more empowered? And then I'll just like sort of swing and land where I'm supposed to be when I'm learning something. And then another thing I would say is really treasuring the clients who represent what you want. Um, as I would get like one or two where I was like, oh, like this human, wants to spend long periods of time with me, is able financially to spend long periods of time with me, and also really for me wants to talk about like pretty deep things.
Mhm.
Get very intimate and share with me. And when I would see, one person come into my life like that, I would make sure that I was, in not like over texting them or over emailing or anything like that, but just really trying to make sure that they felt seen and held. And
Mhm.
from that perspective, I've studied a lot of relational dynamics and communication work in my life, because I'm just genuinely incredibly interested in it.
Yeah.
I studied with Esther Perel, um, and she's amazing.
Cool.
And yeah, I studied with her a few times in New York, and I studied like nonviolent communication and authentic relating, and a bunch of different modalities, which I think for me, um, they inform how I communicate, especially when I'm really trying to facilitate a deep connection. Um, and then I think I'm not sure if I'm even making a list here, but I think like just like genuine care. I If I have a conversation with a client and I'm able to get to something, to a level where they're sharing something really vulnerable, it does like I feel care for them, and the ways that I can comfortably and healthfully show that to them, I definitely engage in that, and I want to. And again, that goes back to boundary work. Like I also don't like want to fully like let them into my personal life, and that's really important. But yeah, it's such a balance. I hope that was enough.
Yeah, it was so good. There's actually like a thing that I'm holding on to in what you said, the
Mm,
maintaining boundaries but keeping my heart open.
mm,
Like I feel like I don't know. I want that somewhere where I can see it. Because I think that's so key in life in general, but definitely in the work that we do, of like
mhm,
knowing like doing the work to know what my boundaries are. And sometimes that's a little bit of trial and error.
Yeah.
Um, and then declaring, but also holding those boundaries while remaining open is such a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely is. And yeah, and I want to say again too, it's like I in no way feel like I have everything figured out, and it's like a constant journey. And I like that too. Like I like when I feel challenged by a regular who, you know,
Mm-hmm.
he might not even realize what he's asking or something, or we're in like a conversation. And I had this happen recently on a 3 day with a client where we were talking about one of my best friends, Geneva Lenz. She's a photographer,
Mm-hmm.
and we were chatting about her. And just offhandedly, he was, because I was like, she's home for the holiday for Thanksgiving, and he was like, oh, like where's home for her? And I just was like, I was like, nope. And I was like, well,
Mm-hmm.
I'll let her answer that, you know. And it's just like, that's kind of, you know, maybe an easy thing, that, but for me it was like, we're like 3 days into our thing and I'm feeling very like open, but it's like I need to constantly be connected to, like, this is a provider client relationship. And then I said that, and I was like, yeah, you'll need to ask her. And I didn't like say it like, how the, you know, how dare you ask that or anything. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
was just like, oh yeah, like you're gonna need to ask her about that, like with little like smile and wink. And he was like, oh my God, I'm sorry, like I wasn't thinking, like of course I shouldn't have asked that. Like I was like, yeah, don't worry about it,
Yep.
like no worries. So yeah, like I guess when I say that, I think about just like the responding with compassion too is important. You know, not all clients are trying to like screw us over or like get personal information. Like sometimes it's just like an honest mistake, and you being empowered and compassionate in sharing your boundary can sometimes be like something they deeply admire, and maybe they like you even more for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think oftentimes like if they flub up like that, right? Where like if they have a moment where they feel comfortable enough to ask that question, it means you're doing your job right. In that they're
Mm,
comfortable and like basically forgot, right? And part of, I think sometimes for me, part of being in this work and doing this work and part of the job is maintaining boundaries like that and being the one to remember that those are the boundaries.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I love your reflections. I feel like you're so eloquent.
oh, thank you. I just have a really beautiful thing to reflect right now. So
Ah, well, thank
it's
you.
yes. Yeah, I was just thinking a few minutes ago, I was like, man, I love that this is a podcast and all of that, but I really wish people could see your eyes right now because you have just like really beautiful eyes. Um,
Oh,
so just
thank you.
for the record, everyone listening, like
Yes, yes.
Amber Délice has beautiful eyes.
Oh, thank you so much.
Of
This
course.
is where it just turns into like a flirt fest between
Of course,
Parker and Amber.
100%. Yes.
Yeah. By the end of it, this will just be on OnlyFans.
Yeah.
It'll just be moaning and all sorts of things.
100%. It's like podcast, we're naked, you have no idea, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Pay for the sound of us being naked.
100%. I mean, there's a market for that. There's a market for everything. It's one of
It
the
really is.
things.
If you can
I'm
think about it, someone will pay for it.
100%. This industry never ceases to amaze me.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so and like this brings me to my next question too, is just speaking of the industry.
Hmm.
I want to ask this to everyone because I think it's an important question and everyone has like a slightly different answer to it, so I'm fascinated by it. But what do you wish, or what's something that you wish people would understand about your work specifically or the industry as a whole? Either or is fine.
Mm. When you say people, do you mean people in the civilian world
Mm-hmm.
or client? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Hmm.
thinking Civi World
Hmm.
specifically.
Hmm. Hmm. I notice when you ask that, my heart starts to feel a little like pain, and so I think I definitely feel some like
Mm-hmm.
tenderness around this. You know, something that I'm coming up against right now is around relationship and dating. You know, as we were talking about in the beginning, um, you know, and we this is a common refrain, you know, that everyone's heard. It's like sex work is work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I find that for me, the men that I am trying to date really hit a wall there, and will kind of go into a space of like, oh, like you're a sex worker, like that's totally fine, like we can be non-monogamous. And I'm like, that's not the same. Like if
Yeah.
you think that, yeah, and like, and I'm not like a strictly monogamous person. I believe that that should flow from the commitment and agreements in the relationship, and then you can
Mhm.
open it and close it, and it's fine. But it comes from devotion and commitment. Um, but I'm experiencing a sense of like, I just had a situation where someone I was dating told me that he would want a 24-hour period of waiting to see me before or after I saw a client.
Interesting.
Your face right now, Parker. I wish I could we could share this, because that's exactly how I felt. I was just like and
There's so
it just
much.
there's so much. It brought up so much for me around, yeah, shaming, stigma, all of
Hmm.
that. And yeah, and at the same time, like I understand that there may be things in a relationship where you can like help the person feel more comfortable, but so when I asked him to explain more, which luckily I didn't burst into a ball of flames and anger, and I just was like, tell
Yes.
me more about that. I may have also bursted into a ball of flames like at another time with him,
This
but
is when your
I
communication skills
yes.
come in handy. Yeah.
Oh my God,
Nonviolent
yeah.
communication.
Not violent. As much as I wanted to be violent. Uh,
Yes.
yeah. As an aside, I told a client this and he was like, is that the significant other equivalent of can I be your first client of the day? And I was like, yes, thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Anyway, going back.
I love that the
So I was
client
like,
got it. That's great.
yeah, my client totally got it. And I was like, yeah, thank
100%.
you. Anyway, so yes, coming back to calmness. So I was like, tell me more about that. Like, why do you want that? And he was like, well, when I've been in non-monogamous relationships in the past, like
Mhm.
we've had an agreement of kind of like, my energy has been with someone else, and so maybe I'll like take a day off or whatever. And I was like, well, again, like this isn't me. Like I'm not going and having an equal, energetic receiving, giving exchange with someone that I desire or lust after or love, and then getting my cup filled from that and then coming back. Like it's I am I this is a I am emotionally facilitating
Mhm.
something, and engaging in intimacy with someone else, and it's for pay, it's for money, so that is my receiving, and I accept that transaction like completely. Like
Mhm.
I am getting paid what I consider well for my emotional presence, my intimacy, my yeah, like all of that, my authenticity
Yeah.
in Amber's space anyway, and then I'm coming back, but my cup is not full from that interaction.
Right.
Like yeah, like
Yeah.
I need to go then resource myself, spend time alone, spend time with friends, to get that back. And for him to say that and basically say, I am not going to be that solace for you. I'm not going to
Mhm.
be that person for you. Oh, it was just like so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, yeah, I feel like from people who might want to be with us or date us is like is to try as much as they can to understand that like this work is like any other work, or like a therapist or something. I mean, it's not like any other work, because I do want, like, I have a little bit of a problem with the sex work is work thing too, is like because we give so much, like so much of ourselves,
Hmm.
and there is more interaction like literally with the body
Hmm.
than other work, and that is a different energetic toll. So I think it's more than work. It's what I would say.
Hmm.
But yeah, just like a therapist or something, like they need to have practices to reroute and to come back to themselves. And so I just would want someone to know that like we'd still like need that. Like this is not I guess I'm having trouble finding the words for this, but it's not something that um is like having other relationships that nourish us. It's a job, and the care that we need doesn't get like diminished because of the fact that we're like receiving touch or receiving, connection through this work.
Right.
So
And it
yeah.
doesn't automatically mean that it's an open relationship or a
Yes.
polyamorous relationship situation.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yep.
find that's often the assumption. And I guess, yeah, there's so many things with that. There's like dating as a sex worker has so many pieces in it. I remember going on what happened to be a date with this guy. I didn't intend it to be a date. I was sitting there hanging out with this person, and then I realized all of a sudden that it was a date, and I was like, "Oh, interesting. Okay." There was one point where he was like, I asked him like what kind of work he did, and then he asked me what I did, and I was just like flat out honest and was like, I'm a sex worker. And immediately he was just like looking out the window, just like completely checked out.
Mm.
And luckily I had no attachment because I didn't
Yeah.
even think of it as a date. Um,
Yeah.
but it was one of those things where I called him on it. I was just like,
Good. Oh,
it
fuck
was
yes.
cool because I didn't have any attachment, so I could be sort of this
Mm.
like boss ass bitch that I really
Mm.
like would hope I would be even if I did have attachment, you know?
Oh, tell me more. I
Um
must hear more.
so I was just kind of like, hey, so as soon as I told you what I did for work, you were gone. So can you tell me
Yes.
about that? And
Oh, I'm so glad you did this.
it was so good. And he was just kind of like, yeah, like I can't see myself with anyone in that line of work. And I was just like, interesting. Like again, the tell me more about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nonviolent
Yeah.
communication.
Yes.
And his response was, I mean, he just it and I respect it because I was just like, you just know yourself. You know that you're a monogamous person who sees the work that I do as being in other intimate relationships with people, which is
Mhm.
true. But I agree with you, it is different. And I like sex work is work. Um and I like the way that you put that it doesn't like fill my cup. It's not um there are moments where it's like beautiful and giving, and I fucking love my job, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's nuanced. It's yeah.
Yeah, but
Hmm.
it's not the same as like being in a relationship with someone in a lot of ways. And then I find out later, because I'm still friends with this person, I like see them around, and I find out later like he's seen providers.
Ah, yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
uh-huh. So I
Hmm.
was just kind of like,
Yeah.
you, sir, are a fascinating beast. And yeah, it was one of those where I was like, well, I'm glad I got that out of the way with someone who like I wasn't really into.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, like in the moment. That's a gift. Like and maybe he, sees it that way or doesn't, but I feel like you gave him a gift. There's just so many ways that we don't do that, and we all, I mean, not all the time, but like we often, like as humans, notice when someone else checks out because of something or like
mhm,
starts to disassociate. And so often, like we're not taught to name it. But I do a lot of study with a man named John Wineland,
mm,
who's amazing. I don't know what to call him. I feel like calling him like a relationship guru is just an annoying way of putting it, but he talks a lot about like masculine and feminine, not as gender but like as energies, and
mm,
he talks about how like the feminine is, one of the gifts of the feminine is to bring awareness in the moment, for the masculine, what, and again, like not with gender but like the feminine essence. And I feel like that's what you did. Like you're just like, I am present, I am like conscious to what's happening, and like this is like my gift to you, and like raising, bringing him back to his integrity or consciousness, and whether he knows why he would date a provider or not. Yeah, I feel like I'm just really happy you shared that story.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I resonated so much with like what you were sharing, so that I was just kind of like, I'll share this bit. I
Mm.
also love like thank you for pointing it out as a me like giving him a gift, because I certainly was just like I am laying out, like calling him out. But I
Yeah.
like seeing it as
Hmm.
a gift because it is one of those things that's like I think having these hard conversations, confronting these like moments that don't quite sit right, is part of is part of changing the world, to put it in a very like maybe dramatic kind of way, but like those are the small moments that count more than I think we're taught to believe.
Oh yeah, I
So
100% believe that, because in that moment you're choosing to go in, like to go deeper as opposed to
mhm.
turn away. And so much of, yeah, what we're shown in society and media is like just like turning away or like brushing things under the rug or something. And like, no, I
Yeah.
am not about that.
Yeah. And it's doing
Mhm.
it in that way, like you mentioned earlier, with like holding a boundary with that client that asked a question, and you just had to
Mhm.
be like, well, nope, you have to ask the other person. It's similar to that, where it's like not assuming that someone's coming for you, not assuming that someone means an
Mm.
offense, but calling them out or calling them in. I really like that terminology of like
Yes.
calling someone in and being like, let me tell you what that experience was for me, so that you can
Mhm.
reflect on yourself here for a minute.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I love that. Oh
Mm.
my God, we
Yes.
could talk about this forever.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, yeah, I feel like we're getting to like the juicy heart of our conversation right now. I'm
Yeah,
really
we
enjoying
can
it.
always do another episode with Amber Délice and Parker
Yes,
Westwood.
yes, please.
Um, I have some rapid fire questions for you,
Ooh, okay.
if you're ready for them.
I think I'm finally caffeinated here. So yes.
Yes, good. Okay, cool. I have some first ones to get us like in a rhythm of being quick paced, and then they get juicier from there. Okay. So, vanilla or chocolate?
Why am I thinking so hard about this? I'm just like, well, this okay. I need to be better at rapid fire. Clearly, this is not my forte. Chocolate. I'm
We were
like,
just
well,
talking about like nonviolent communication, and I'm like, all right,
I
great,
know.
we're gonna go in.
I'm like, well, the deep thing about vanilla is okay, chocolate. We'll just do chocolate.
Chocolate, I love it. Okay, pancakes or waffles?
Oh, waffles.
Concert or festival?
Concert.
Favorite place you've ever been?
Uh, Asturias in Spain.
Ooh,
I love
um,
Spain.
yeah, that sounds beautiful.
Mm.
A book that's on your mandatory reading list.
Oh, so many. Oh
I knew this would be good for you.
my gosh. I just one?
Just one, but it's not the
Oh,
one. I didn't word it that way. Just any that would be on your mandatory reading list.
especially for us, The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker.
Ooh, great last
Yeah.
name.
Yes.
Um,
Very good. Very good.
yeah, we
Definitely.
love
She
it.
probably got it from you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I definitely came first. Um, a song, a musical artist, or an album that you've been obsessed with lately?
Oh, I've been listening to a lot of just like I saw a thread on Twitter on this of my like up to no good up to no good songs.
Yes.
So a really hot song that I like is called The Valley by Miguel. And this is by no means like a classical piece. This is
Right.
it's just
Yeah.
like yeah, like an up to no good type of song. So for when you're
Love
in that
it.
mood. Mhm.
Yes. We always need those playlists.
Mhm.
A secret talent.
Hmm.
It can also be mostly secret, like maybe people don't guess it right off rip, or it's
Okay.
something that's not normally seen as a talent.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think then if I feel like I've talked a lot about like uh, conflict al conflict alchemy would be
Mm-hmm.
one. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to go with something else. I am a mountain goat. So so
Yes.
I can hike forever, but I just go slowly, but I will like make it to the top. So I love hiking for like 8 to 10 to 12 hours for like many, many, many miles into the mountains. And so I feel like it's my spirit animal is a mountain goat as well. So you
I
get the
love.
spirit animal question too.
Yes. Secret mountain goat. It's
Yes.
like when you're editing a Google Doc and you're like the anonymous mountain goat. Do you know what
Oh,
do you know
yes,
what I'm
I think I
talking?
know what
Yeah,
you
okay.
mean. Mhm.
Anonymous
First I was like,
hedgehog. Yeah. Parker, are you okay? Are you over
yeah.
caffeinated? Um Okay, if you had one superpower, what would it be and why?
I feel like I'm already really good at this, but I have to use conversation to get to it. So I would want the superpower of knowing exactly what someone is desiring, or what is on someone's heart in every moment.
Mm, I love
Yes.
that.
I
That's so good.
feel like it could be used for good and also for evil, but I, use it for good most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time.
Except
Key.
for that guy that asked for a 24-hour wait period. I might not use it for good on him.
we all contain we contain multitudes, you know?
It's true.
We're-
It's true. Yeah. Yeah.
what was the last concert or show you went to?
Oh, Jesus.
Or theater
Uh,
thing, I guess. Yeah.
um, Gosh, with COVID, I'm just like, oh, Jesus, when was this? This was
I
in.
know I might need to scratch this question.
No, it was Santana. I think I went on
Oh,
a duo 24-hour with a client, and he took
nice.
us to Santana in Las Vegas, and that was really fun.
Oh, I
And
bet that was great.
yep, she and I just got to dance, and he got to watch, and it was perfect.
Yay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what's something that brings you joy?
Hmm. Right now, I have an amazing circle of girlfriends, and the things that bring me joy the most are when we get together and we all bring something to eat and something to drink, and we just dive in with each other. And there are tears, and there's laughter, and there's
Yes.
deep connection, and we've just like weaved a really deep and beautiful friendship together, and it's so meaningful to me. So these four women bring me joy.
I love that. That's my
Mhm.
favorite.
Yeah.
Well, cool. That is the end of my rapid fire questions.
Whew, yay.
Yeah.
I'm just thank you I'm noticing that I'm not very good at rapid fire. So I want to like think deeply about everything.
Same.
Something to
It's
look at.
a blessing and a
Something
curse.
something to think deeply about is how I don't
Yeah.
think you rapid fire questions. Great.
That's so great. But yeah, thank you again for taking the time. Also, if you do you want to let our listeners our listeners know where to find you? I'll put your links in the show notes as well, but if you want to do it verbally, you're welcome to.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, and they'll be in the show notes. But my name is Amber Délice, and I'm on Twitter as Meet Amber Délice, and my last name is spelled Delice. And then my website is just meetamberdelise.com. And you can also Google me, and it is, I think I'm the only Amber Délice in existence. So you'll find me
Hey,
there
that's a
too.
perk.
Yeah, it's a perk, and then it also requires a third name for like
Oh.
restaurant reservations and things, when I don't want to put the name Amber Délice on
Oh
things to give
yeah.
away who I am, just in case you have any people poking around and seeing who's coming in with this client.
That's so
Yeah,
smart.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Well, thank you again so much for taking the time. And as always, it's so good to see your face.
So good to see you too. Thank you for your eloquent questions and your beautiful reflection, and so good to see you.
Yeah, of course. All right, I'm gonna end recording.
Okay, bye.
Bye. It's such a adorably clumsy exit to that interview. I'm still learning how to do this, and I appreciate all of your input and patience with me as I learn how to create something you all want to listen to. I thoroughly enjoyed that interview with Amber, which is why I say she will likely be back on the show after we stopped recording. She and I ended up talking for about an hour. I so appreciate all of you listening. It's really wonderful to be able to create this for you. So if you have any feedback about how I can make it better, please let me know. Everything is in the show notes about how to get in touch with me. I've also included everything that we talked about in the interview with Amber. All the links, all the safe sex comic, the show that she mentioned that like got her started thinking about being an escort, and all of the everything is in the show notes. I have made it as easy as possible for you to get access to all the things that we talked about that may have piqued your interest. Awesome. I think you're great. Everyone have a fantastic week, and I don't know. Spacey things. One of my teachers always told me, reach for the moon, because even if you miss, you'll land among the stars, which is very inspirational poster-y, but I do like it. Just keep trying out there, everyone. It's a really hard time to be doing things, but no one can do it like you. So even if you land among the stars, maybe you'll just get covered in glitter like you're in a strip club that we can't go to anymore. So, perks.